All right, I want to turn it over to, this is David Dean. David is a graduate of Sandy Spring Friends School and a graduate of Dickinson College. He was in the Native American class 6 years ago. David has founded an organization called Unity Hoops where he teaches leadership and self-esteem on a Crow reservation in Montana through basketball. Brewster, could you pull that shade down? Because he's going to show some videos too. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to David. So, go ahead, David.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So, are you all liking this class a lot?
Yeah.
I guess.
You answered wrong. Points come off the test.
I guess you don't have much.
Yes.
You are. Yeah. What are some things? What are some things that y'all are have been learning so far in the past month or so?
Misconception of Indian and stereotype.
Pocahontas.
And the truth about that. Yeah. The what?
The farther we got is the three the three settlements, Jamestown, Plymouth, and Connecticut. That's.
Are you still using that same book, The Earth Shall Weep?
Yeah.
So you're just like a quarter of the way through that or something?
We're basically, up through chapter 4, the Pequot War.
Cool.
King Philip.
So I actually, I took, and are all of you, are you all seniors or juniors or what?
Senior.
Mostly seniors?
You're a junior.
So I took this class in the fall of my senior year, and I actually really loved it. And I think the reason that I loved it so much was because it was like one of the first times where I really felt like I had a class that really kind of told me the truth about the world, and it was a lot different than a lot of the other history related classes that I had taken up until that point. And I don't know what the requirements are still at Sandy Spring, but when I was here, two of the classes we were required to take, and obviously this isn't a requirement, though maybe it should be. But some of the classes that we were required to take were classes like Arts and Ideas.
Yes.
Right? Classes like Western Civilization. I don't know if that's still a requirement. It is? Right. And so what are those classes about? What? White people? And have y'all taken them?
Yeah.
What are they about?
We don't remember.
Yeah, right. yeah.
I mean, Arts and Ideas, you can't really have truth behind it. I mean, sure, you just get information about what the artist or musician did, but there's no real this was wrong, this was right aspect to it.
Right. So what you see is that a lot of the courses, like you said, white people, a lot of the courses that are required, even at a place like Sandy Spring, but even more so elsewhere in our education system, courses that talk about history as what they say they're about. Really that's conflated with history is really code for history of white people, of people of European descent, of European history, of the history of men, usually, the history of the rich. And so I think the reason, the fact that this course, at least in certain ways, was different, was one of the reasons why it drew me in so much and drew my interest so much, and really kind of dictated a lot of my academic interest for years to come after that. For I guess the last 6 years since I took this course, and so I think it really attracted me to learning more about the histories of people who have been most kicked to the curb by the dominant society, right? People who have been most oppressed. And what you find is that a lot of those stories whether they're present day experiences or historical experiences, are some of the most hidden, from our view in this society. And and why do y'all think they're hidden and they're hard to access? Why do you think they're not taught so often?
It's like the one part of U.S. history where everything that the Europeans did was wrong. Like there was no, I guess, correct thing that they did when they settled here. It was just killing and just oppressing people.
Right. A lot of it was. Yeah. Did you have something?
Most of it it's not pretty.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think another reason that those stories are often kept hidden is because they sort of fundamentally challenge some of the myths that we identify with in this country. For example, like the American dream, the idea that we really do have equal opportunity in this country, and that if you work hard, you'll just naturally rise out of poverty, lift yourself up by your own bootstraps, which is actually physically impossible, and rise up. And that idea that if you work hard in this country, the idea of the American dream that if you work hard, period, you will succeed, you will rise out of poverty. There's actually like a hidden message there, and I don't know if any of you can see that, but what is the unstated message there?
If you're like unsuccessful or poor, it's your own fault.
Right. So she said, if you're unsuccessful or poor, it's your own fault. Like, and you're the only one to blame. So this system that we have, right? It doesn't acknowledge, the truth about the oppression that is real in the society, and then it creates this mentality of self-blame, for the deprivation and for the struggles of those who really do struggle the most, and that can even be seen in our students. Like Bob said, I run this program on the Crow Indian Reservation in southeast Montana. I don't know if y'all have really gotten to learning about reservations too much yet, but where I work, there's 70 to 90% unemployment depending on the time. There are homicide rates that are higher than some of the most violent American cities. Alcoholism is rampant. Homelessness is high. And what some of our kids, our students, where I've seen that really, really alive in them is like after our program during the day, it's a summer program. A lot of these kids, I'd realize that they'd go home and they wouldn't have food, right? So they'd come to camp the next morning and eat tons and tons of food right away in the morning. And a lot of them were really ashamed to have to ask for food, because we had extra food and we oftentimes gave it to kids to take home. And a lot of them were ashamed to ask for that extra food because based on this logic of the American dream and this logic of success that is like shoved down people's throats in this country, what does it say about them if they're hungry?
That they're not working hard enough.
Right, exactly. That is their fault. So in addition to taking Native American history at Sandy Spring, I also was an athlete, like Bob said, and I mainly played soccer, and I also played basketball, and some of the most obviously sports at times, especially male athletics, can be sort of turned into this like hyper masculine sort of like competition where people are trying to one-up each other all the time, and where guys can't express emotion and all of these things. But a lot of times I think that at their best, sports can really be incredibly meaningful and experiences for young people. And for me, coming up, some of the things that stuck with me most about my athletic experiences, even at Sandy Spring, were things like what Eduardo used to tell us on the soccer field. He used to be the soccer coach here, and I remember he always told us to play, out of love, for having that be the motivation for everything you do on the soccer field, right? So you work hard, and you bust your butt on the field because out of a love for your teammates that are doing that with you. And I remember my basketball coach here also telling us, like, you are nothing without each other, and you will have no success without putting the team first and without each other. And so those messages, those really stuck with me. And then in college, I continued playing basketball at the beginning of college, and I made a friend who actually before I get there, I'll also say that my final project in Native American history was about the cultural significance of basketball on reservations. So on Indian reservations all around the country, basketball, and I think they still read Frank Snake Church.
Yeah, well, they haven't yet, but they will. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So basketball on most reservations around the country is incredibly huge. We've had, and on the Crow Reservation particularly, it's like more popular than I've ever seen it anywhere, like ever, which is crazy because it's a pretty popular sport, right? But yeah, we've had students like literally named by their parents after like NBA players, and so yeah, it's incredibly popular, and sometimes it can be sort of serve as a sort of a refuge for kids. To at least temporarily stop thinking about a lot of the struggle that they experience. And so yeah, when I went to college, in addition to playing basketball, I also made a friend at my school who was Crow, who grew up on the Crow Reservation, and his mother ran this community organization out on the reservation, and they did a lot of things, partially to help young people. They have a food bank for the whole community. They do a lot of things that are positive for the community, and are kind of like a shining light for a lot of people out there. And so I started really reflecting. I also stopped playing basketball about halfway through college, and I started really reflecting on like these things I told you, like kind of the most what sport really meant to me. And what my experience with athletics was, and what I was taking, what I could take away from that for the rest of my life. And so I kind of had this idea, and I started talking to my friend about it a lot. Then eventually I proposed the idea to his mom, who runs this community organization out there, to run a summer youth program. For kids who are, like I said, like some of the most basketball-obsessed kids like I've ever met. It's crazy. But running a program that started with basketball and used basketball, but connected it to a type of education that was much more important and needed in the lives of kids out there. And I didn't totally know what that would look like at first, but I really just saw this potential to use the sport, both like the positive things about it, but also just the sport in general as like a hook for participation to bring kids in and expose them to things that could really be helpful in their lives. And so yeah, I'm going to show you this video real quick, this first video, sort of, and I want you to watch it, and then I'm going to ask you a few questions about it, and it's going to lead to helping you understand the way in which we use the game of basketball in our programs.
The first one, David?
Yeah, number one.
John Berman goes one-on-one with Mike Krzyzewski for the Nightline interview.
Duke has won its first national championship. For the first time in 2 decades, college basketball has a repeat champion.
Technicals on Coach K. Okay, Coach K. Shevsky makes you pay.
He's the man who has won 4 national titles.
Duke is the king of the dance. 2000.
His theories on leadership read like a motivational speaking kit. Take his metaphor of the fist.
With a basketball team, it just works out. I coach a team where there are 5 guys. And if 5 can play as one, that means you're constantly going at people with all the talents of the team that you have.
He's had so much success with the fist at Duke and coaching the 2008 gold medal Olympic team, there's been constant speculation about a possible jump to the pros.
Something has to change.
And how should that happen?
Education, hard work, pride.
No, Nelson. You can't do it on your own. None of us can.
That's me.
And that's you. And that's Oliver. And that's Kathy. And each one of us are too little to do anything. But together, we have the power.
In the trial of Tim DeChristopher. Environmental activist Tim DeChristopher was found guilty on all counts today.
Jury has convicted Tim DeChristopher of sabotaging a controversial federal oil and gas lease auction.
The environmental activist faces up to 10 years in prison.
There is no minimum prison sentence on this. There is a chance that the judge could give him probation.
Thank you all. You are all amazing. You've been amazing all week. You all have reacted with joy and resolve. You've shown that your power will not be intimidated by any power that they have. And that's the most important thing that has happened here this week. Because everything that went on inside that building tried to convince me that I was alone and that I was weak. They tried to convince me that I was like a little finger out there on my own that could easily be broken. And all of you out here were the reminder for all of us that I wasn't just a finger all alone in there, but that I was connected to a hand with many fingers that could unite as one fist. And that fist could not be broken by the power that they have in there. That fist is not a symbol of violence. That fist is a symbol that we will not be misled into thinking we are alone. We will not be lied to and told we are weak. We will not be divided, and we will not back down. That fist is a symbol that we are connected and that we are powerful. It's a symbol that we hold true to our vision of a healthy and just world, and we are building the self-empowering movement to make it happen.
So this right here is a picture of activists in the American Indian movement in the late 60s and early 70s. And then this is actually the logo of this movement that started in about 2011 in Canada called Idle No More, which is this movement for Indigenous rights and Indigenous sovereignty in Canada and parts of the United States. Let me turn the light back on. What were those last 2 clips, the video clips? Not the basketball one, but those other 2 clips. Does anyone know what they were? What they were from? Not the first one or the last one?
You're talking about like movie-wise or like?
Yeah, I mean movie-wise or like real-life-wise, what they referenced.
I mean, the second clip, it was a recent movie about Nelson Mandela that came out, and was talking about, I know you want to change the world, but you can't do it by yourself. And then that relates to the last person that just spoke, saying, I might be just a pinky, but, I have other people around me that help me to make the fist. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So yeah, like she said, that first, or the first movie clip was from this film that was made recently off of a book called Mandela Long Walk to Freedom about Nelson Mandela, the amazing activist from South Africa that recently died, and that was a clip of when he was getting introduced to the African National Congress, which is this activist organization that he was with for a very long time, that was working to end apartheid in South Africa. And the next clip was this guy named Tim DeChristopher, who is an environmental activist, and a few years back he basically, there was this auction in Utah to auction off thousands and thousands of acres of pristine wilderness in Utah for oil and gas drilling. And so he basically like entered this he didn't have any money, but he entered this auction and just faked like he had lots of money and just like won all of these parcels of land. And it actually ended up raising a lot of awareness about the auction, and the auction was deemed illegal actually because there was all this awareness drawn to the specifics of it. But he actually went to prison for 2 years. But my next question, maybe some people can try to answer that haven't talked yet, if you have any thoughts, is what connections did you see from that clip that related to basketball at the beginning with the other clips there? Or the pictures at the end, too.
Talking about the fist in all the videos, about how, like, all different people can, like, unite and work as one unit. Basically like a fist.
Yeah. Yeah. So and that is kind of the exact parallel that we draw for our students in Montana on the reservation, and the way we draw that parallel for them is we ask them, and I'll ask you these questions, so play along with me and answer the question. So we ask them first, what is the mark, like the essential quality of a great basketball player? What would y'all say it is? Any thoughts? You can answer too, Kyle. What'd you say? Patience?
Communication.
Communication.
Being tall.
Being tall. You got some?
Hard work.
Hard work.
Teamwork.
What?
Teamwork.
Teamwork. Cool. What do you think?
Determination.
Yeah, so that typically happens. We get lots of different answers, but what we look for and what we say at the end of it is the mark of a great basketball player is someone who does absolutely whatever they can to make their team better, who goes to any length to improve their team in any way they can, is always searching for ways to do that. And the next question we ask is in life, what is your team?
My family.
Your family? Yeah, a lot of them say family. Community, right. And so that actually is kind of like the answer we look for. And so a lot of them say, they think about it and they say my community, or the Crow Nation. And then the next question we ask after that is, so in life then, what is it that you have to do? What is your responsibility? Nobody? What were you going to say?
I was going to say, do whatever you can to improve the lives of your community.
Exactly.
The world.
Exactly. And so that's exactly where we bring it back to, that therefore in life your responsibility is to go to, like Martin Luther King said, he said, what we're meant to do here is to go to any length to restore community. And so the central idea of what we're trying to do with this program is bring kids into the fold as activists who can change the history of what has for such a long time been one of violence toward their people, their land, and their culture. and sort of awakening young people through this vehicle of basketball to their ability to do that. And so in that way, like, you know, basketball serves as this like training ground for life, right? Because those same things, that same discipline, that same teamwork, that same sacrifice that is so necessary on the court to succeed, to win as a team on the court, is the same thing, you know, that is so important to do in life, right? It is like, yeah, it just translates so perfectly into some of the greatest tasks that we have before us in life itself. And the interesting thing about that idea of like of sport or athletics being a training ground for life, and that being the purpose of it, is that is exactly how indigenous nations all around the world have, like, throughout history and still do in some times. That's exactly how sport was used in so many indigenous societies. Like, this literal, like, training ground for the biggest obstacles you would face in life. And literally, in these kids' lives now, the biggest things that they face are changing, you know, the course of history in their community towards one that is healing and towards one that is restorative. And, like, even in you know, back in the day, like, for example, some tribes in northern Montana, they had their children do this game that has been translated into English today as being called run and scream. So kids, like, parents would literally have kids like pick up a stick and just like and all these kids would be lined up with a stick above their heads, and they would race as long as they would take a deep breath, and they would start running forward, and they'd be like, ah, and they would race screaming as long as they could with that one breath, and like the kid who got the furthest on that one breath would win, because that simulated sort of like, you know, what children would need to do if they were isolated and they were in danger. They would need to be able to run and scream for a very long time. And so that was the traditional use of sport in indigenous societies as well. And so we Unity Hoops sort of started out as I've done it for 3 summers, and it sort of started out as something that was a little more surface level, still really powerful, and kids really loved it. But kind of just like was mostly a basketball camp, like with really positive values, and related, and also had like a life skills component where we talked about some general life skills that young people might need as they go forward. But we're really trying to sort of develop it further. And one of the things actually that I'm going to be doing a lot this year involves working on developing it. We're really trying to develop it into something that still has basketball, but also really focuses directly on a social justice-centered academic curriculum that is really relevant to our students' lives. So, like in addition to this basketball component, having a component where students really do, learn about their history. And learn about not just the history of oppression to their people, but the history of resistance to that oppression, and can sort of like begin to see themselves in this like intergenerational struggle for freedom, and can start to and also giving students opportunities to both build academic skills while also working on projects directly to create change in their community. There's something called youth, it's a long title, but it's called Youth Participatory Action Research. And it's something where young people literally learn research methods, so like academic social science research methods. And they do group research projects specifically studying the problems in their community. And they authentically develop after that solutions and ways, strategies for creating change. And and then implement them as best they can. And so we're really working on getting trained in how to do that and to do that with kids as well. And so, like I said, it's sort of like young people both gain academic skills and therefore have this move forward on this path to college, and can have the opportunity to go to college, then possibly come back to their community and reinvest in their community and bring back, come back as teachers and doctors and lawyers and build sort of like a sustainable community that their people need, while also within our program learning about what's really going on in this community, what really are the roots of why my mom is an alcoholic and hits me all the time. Like, why does that happen? Because, like I said, once you get disconnected from that history, you start to see everything as natural. When really, if you learn the history, like you all are in some ways, although it can be depressing, what it really has done for me and what it does for a lot of young people is, it shows them that everything they see around them was created, by people, and therefore can be changed. That it's not natural. And so this next video that I'm going to show you. It's a video that I recently made. Like I said, for a lot of this year, I'm going to be doing curriculum development and fundraising for the program itself to kind of get some sustainable funding sources, and trying to build connections with people to help out with the program. This is a video I just made. Part of what I'm doing is a fundraiser to help me sustain myself while I do that work this year. This is the fundraising video for that, and I'm not trying to solicit donations from all of you right now. I'm just showing you the video because I think it shows some cool pictures from our program, and it kind of talks about where we're trying to take this thing.
3.5 years ago, I had an idea to use the wildly popular game of basketball as a tool to empower disenfranchised Crow Native American youth to become agents of change in their community, to alter the course of what has for centuries been a history of violence toward their people, their land, and their culture. I connected with an interested group of friends and a wonderful Crow community organization, and together we developed a youth empowerment program called Unity Hoops. In the summers since, we have worked with over 200 young people and provided them with a curriculum that integrates the sport they love with a social justice-centered education that is relevant to their lives. It is our hope to build deep, healing relationships with our students over multiple years, helping them walk forward on a road to and through college, and most importantly, toward a lifetime of investment in their community. Thus far, we have never earned a penny from this work, and have often had to spend our own money to cover program expenses. To reach our goals, we must build the organizational infrastructure to sustain and strengthen this effort. And this requires one thing: time. For much of this year, I will be taking time away from paid employment to commit myself to this purpose, to develop the innovative curriculum, funding base, and key connections to launch Unity Hoops into a thriving future. With this fundraiser, I am seeking financial support to help me sustain myself during the coming months while I do this work. I will be living lightly and working to cut expenses at every opportunity. Yet even with savings from the past, I will need to raise $8,000 to put the needed amount of time and energy into this project. It is difficult for me to ask for this help, but more bearable than letting go of this dream that has shown so much potential. In our vision, we see our students free from vicious cycles of poverty and despair, and as leaders of a movement toward a just future for their people and for our world. I humbly ask you to help us make this vision a reality by assisting me in jump-starting this movement for change. Thank you.
Cool. So I want to ask you all a question really fast, and that is, what was the motive for Europeans or some Europeans to take land in this country and in this continent? What was the motive? Why did they take the land?
They were searching for gold.
So sometimes definitely searching for gold.
Some of them just believe that they had the right to just take it. Like that, you know, because they thought that nobody else was around, that they could automatically just claim it and take whatever they wanted from it.
Right, nobody else was around because they probably didn't consider the people that were there really people.
Yeah.
Also.
I think there were like they were competing, different countries, competing about how much land you have, like as colonies, and so they just basically more and more people come and.
So like wanting to like one up the other European countries.
Religion.
What'd you say?
A religion.
So their religion related definitely to or their interpretation of their religion related to why they did it.
They didn't believe that the Native Americans were equal to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they believed that since they're not equal to, you know, the Europeans, that they could just take the land.
Yeah. From studying this stuff for a while, the place where I've gotten to, in terms of really trying to understand why all that was taken, why history unfolded the way it did. It seems like the number one foremost reason was the pursuit of profit, of money, and sometimes that came in the form of seeking gold, and it came in a lot of other different ways too, like having access to natural resources that could make a few people a lot of money. My ancestors were in Georgia in the early 1800s, actually. And one of the things that happened in Georgia in the early 1800s was there was a period of time in a part of Georgia at least where white folks and native folks were living at least somewhat civilly and neighborly. But what happened was, for a few reasons, but like people with power started really trying to pit the interests of white people and native people against one another, and of different native nations against one another in that area, to try to sort of divide and conquer it, because they realized that they wanted a lot of that indigenous land. And some of the reasons that they wanted it were, number one, because they realized there was a lot of gold there, and number two, to clear vast tracts of land to grow slave plantations, which also brought in huge amounts of money. And so that profit motive was the justification, for the Trail of Tears, where the Cherokee, the Creek, and others were exported all the way across the country to Oklahoma. And I have an ancestor, for example, who bought land in the Cherokee Land Lottery in 1830, and then in 1850. We even saw, papers of his list of slaves within the larger plantation that he got because of that stolen land, because of that theft. And Custer, I don't know if you've learned about Custer yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. But he was this dude who went west and ultimately met his demise, but sort of conquered a lot of people and took a lot of land while he was at it. And he was doing that, with the interest of coal companies and logging companies. Again, this huge profit motive. And what we see is that, we're all that thing is still with us. That desire to sacrifice human beings and sacrifice the natural world sort of like on the altar of profit is still with us. And in a lot of ways, it's really going to prove to come to kind of get us all through, inequality in this country, for example, has grown enormously lately. Climate change has also affected this, and that's a way that all of us are eventually going to could eventually meet some sort of demise if we don't get this thing together and actually, turn it around and sort of create a life-generating society, not one that is constantly, built on destruction. And so, Unity Hoops also refers to this idea of uniting the sacred hoop, which is something that Black Elk talked about, and which is something that I think was mentioned at the beginning of your book as well. And that's something that all of us, it's not just charity work, right? It's not just, you don't do this because of charity. You don't do this because you feel bad for some, kid. It's also because, your own freedom is bound up in that, because ultimately this way of thinking and acting in the world is going to get all of us. And so I really like this idea of shared liberation, right? And that uniting that hoop and mending that hoop is really in all of our interests. And so I hope you guys, try to seek ways to do that. And there are a lot of ways to do that. But yeah, so that's the thing I want to leave y'all with.
All right, David, thank you so much.
Yeah.